Microphone. Good evening. I'd like to call the March 14th West Ada School District Board of Trustees meeting to order. It's 6 p.m. in the evening, and our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, are there any changes or amendments to the agenda?
There are not, Chair.
Great, thank you. Next up is our update from Superintendent Dr. Bubb.
Chair Kofelt, trustees, I'm going to have just two things tonight. One is really a highlight. I got to go over to Barbara Morgan STEM Academy. Trustee Frazier was there, and what they had done is their second graders were, a problem was posed to them, different groups. Everybody had a little different problem, and then they were able to go through and go through problem-based learning and come up with what their solution was, which I'm going to tell you, seeing second graders come up with solutions for things is absolutely amazing. But it was great because we got to go around. Parents came in. They called it the World's Fair. Parents came in and were able to hear their kids present and talk about solutions to different problems. They're the future inventors of the world. So it was really a spectacular event. So congratulations to Mrs. Wright, our principal over there, and to that entire staff. And thanks for having me out. And thanks, Trustee Frazier, for being there as well. And the second piece is strategic plan. We are looking at really developing through the rest of this school year our long-term strategic plan. And this is going to be a big lift. I mean, it'll be a really big lift. But the goal being to have parent meetings, to have community meetings, to have teacher meetings, admin meetings, to really get this idea of what we want every West Ada graduate to look like walking across the stage at the end of their time here in West Ada. And so it's going to be it'll be a big lift. We met with them for the first time on Friday with the expectation that we finish by the end of the year and then kick off the start of next year with this long-term plan, this long-term strategic plan. So we're excited about it. It's going to be it'll be a lot for everybody. I encourage parents, anybody that's listening, I would encourage everybody to participate in those community groups because it's really going to be an important piece that we get community voice in this, that we get voice from each of our different groups. But I think it'll be exciting for West Ada and really give us a clear direction as we move forward. Okay, and we'll move right into recommendations for Eagle Academy. Principal and Mr. Stans, you want to come up for that?
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman, trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Bubb. It is my honor to bring forward to you a recommendation for the next principal of Eagle Academy. And before I do this, I would like to say a few things about the current principal, James Busheen, who is retiring at the end of this current school year. Mr. Busheen has been the principal there for 16 years. And to put it lightly, he's been amazing. He has fostered a positive culture. Students love attending Eagle Academy and staff love working there. 6 years ago, he successfully led the staff through competency-based education. It was not, let's say, enthusiastically received at first, but he got them to the point where they are today that if I tried to take it away, I would have a fight on my hands. He is a champion for all kids. And over the last several weeks when I've talked with staff, and actually a couple students as well, this is what I hear. Could you please clone Busheen? And to me, that is a true testament of the leader he is. He's been a mentor and a friend to all of the Eagle Academy community. So I thank Mr. Busheen for his leadership and service to the school and to the West Ada School District. So our process for finding the next principal for Eagle Academy included surveying students, parents, and staff to identify the desired characteristics for their next leader. I spent a day at Eagle Academy and met individually with staff to hear more about what they want and need in their leader, as well as understand their vision for Eagle Academy. Many of the staff are here tonight, and I thank them for their time and input into this process. On behalf of the executive team, it is my honor to recommend Evan Sprengel to be the next principal for Eagle Academy. Mr. Sprengel began his public education career 17 years ago as a high school economics and psychology teacher at Meridian High School. He has spent the past 9 years serving as an assistant principal. His current home is Eagle Middle School, where he has served the past 5 years. The Eagle Academy community desires a leader who is supportive, understanding, approachable, personable, and visible. Mr. Sprengel exhibits all these characteristics and more. His passion, personal experiences, and devotion to students and staff have put him where he is today. I am confident that Mr. Sprengel will continue to move the needle of excellence the moment he sets foot on the Eagle Academy campus. And now Mr. Sprengel will come forward to make a few remarks.
Welcome. Thank you. Chairman, trustees, and Dr. Bubb, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. I'm so excited to take the next steps of my educational journey as the principal of Eagle Academy. I want to say thank you to Principal Matt Giannetti and the staff at Eagle Middle School for all their support over the past 4 years. And I want to say what an honor it is to follow in the footsteps of Principal James Bouchine, who, along with his outstanding staff, have created such an innovative and effective school for our students. Finally, I want to say thank you to the West Ada executive team for believing in me and giving me this opportunity. I look forward to the challenges that come with being a head principal and the rewards of seeing our students succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, you know, I always like to just make a couple comments, and one is to your wife, Tara, and let's see if I get the names right, Devin, Brindley, and Ashlyn. Congratulations to you also, because I know the success that we have as individuals is impacted by our families and the support we have. So congratulations on your new adventure.
Thank you.
All right, and next up, well, before I do this, Eagle Academy staff, could you guys stand really quick? Thank you guys for being here. It means a lot. Appreciate it. All right, next up we have Mr. Moser with a recommendation for Rocky Mountain High School principal.
Good evening, Chairman Kofelt, members of the board, Dr. Bubb. Tonight it's my pleasure to bring forward the hiring recommendation for the principal position at Rocky Mountain High School. But before I bring that candidate forward, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the current principal of Rocky Mountain High School, Mr. Mike Arano. Mike is the only principal at Rocky Mountain. Mike is the only principal the Rocky Mountain High School community has known since the opening of the school in 2008, but he has been an employee in our school district for 32 years. Mike began in our district as a part-time Japanese teacher, splitting time between Centennial High School and Meridian High School. Then he was a math teacher at Eagle High School, an assistant principal at Meridian High School. He became the principal at Meridian Academy, and then it became Central Academy, where he spent a couple years, and then in 2008 he was the principal at Rocky Mountain High School. For those of us that have been fortunate to work alongside Mike, we know him as a great leader and a great person. Mike's impact and the legacy he leaves behind will certainly be felt for years to come, as will that special laugh that we all know well. Mike, if you're listening, thank you so much for all that you have done throughout your career in the district. And now for the recommendation. This evening, on behalf of the executive team, I am honored to recommend the hiring of Mr. Dan Lundt as the principal at Rocky Mountain High School. Mr. Lundt comes to the West Ada School District from El Camino High School in the South San Francisco Unified School District, where he has been the principal for the previous 6+ years. He overwhelmingly emerged as the right fit for Rocky Mountain High School, largely based on his in-depth experience and his efforts to implement and sustain the worked to transform his schools into professional learning communities. Throughout the interview process, Mr. Lundt was also able to demonstrate what the students, staff, and parents wanted in the next principal, and that was an individual that is approachable, personable, and a strong communicator. As difficult as it is to see Mr. Hirano wrap up a tremendous career, it brings me comfort to know that Rocky Mountain High School will be under the great leadership of Mr. Dan Lundt. Dan is joining us this evening from his home in California and is willing to share a few words and to answer any questions that you may have. Dan, would you like to share a few words?
Yes, thank you very much. I just first of all just want to express how humbled I am and blessed for this opportunity to work with the Rocky Mountain community and the West Ada School District. It is something that I'm looking forward to learn from Principal Hirano, from the current admin team and staff, and to continue the legacy of excellence at Rocky Mountain High School. I'm here in my office right now because it's still a little early here in California. I wish I could be with you right now, but we're leading our school through an accreditation process, and I'm sure that you are well aware of what that process is like. And I just want to take a moment to thank Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Bubb, and members of Cabinet for their trust in me. And I just want to introduce really quickly 2 members of my family. One of the things that we're really excited about is getting closer to 3 of our daughters. We have 4 daughters, all in college. Well, actually, one is serving in Okinawa as a U.S. Marine. And with me today is our son, who's going into 6th grade, Joshua, and my wife, Wendy. And as I mentioned, I know that transitions are always tough, but I've already received great insight from Mr. Moser and others, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to connect, although virtually during this time and this transition, to learn a little bit more about the culture and to look at ways and how I can enhance and also bring value to Rocky Mountain that is already an excellent place to learn and to grow and get to be part of that family. And as my family is important, as I mentioned, I look forward to be part of that Rocky Mountain family and working with all of you. So again, thank you. I consider myself probably the luckiest person in the world right now.
Mr. Lundt, just wanted to welcome you and your family to the West Ada, to our West Ada family here. And as I looked at your resume, I saw a couple of things that connected me to you right away. I hadn't heard the word Bassett Unified School District in a long time. My sisters both graduated from there, and I lived in the city of Valinda, so I'm sure you recognize that one. And then I hail from the Anaheim area also. So yeah, welcome. We're excited to have you, and we look forward to meeting you and your family.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to find other Californians, and I'm not going to be a pariah when I come.
Well, welcome. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Do we happen to have any Rocky Mountain High School staff that are in here? We don't want to miss the chance to recognize you if you're here. Okay, and that's all right. Let me find my sheet so I know I'm proceeding in the right way. Next on our agenda is the patron input. It's my understanding that we had no one sign up, but as has been my practice, people can change their mind. So if there is anyone that would like to speak to the trustees, you are welcome to do so. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. So next is our discussion, and we'll start off with the third reading of Policy 201.1, the Board of Education Code of Ethics. Mr. Heller.
Thank you, Chair Kofelt, Trustees, Dr. Bubb. This is the third and final reading of Policy 201.1, the School Board Code of Ethics. There have been no changes made to this policy since the second reading, and it is our recommendation that the board approve this policy during the action portion of tonight's agenda. Other than that, I stand for any questions you may have.
Okay, you got off easy. No questions on that one. But you are up again for discussion regarding Policy Review Committee.
Again, Chair Kofelt, trustees, and Dr. Bubb, as you recall, the board took action on February 14th to declare the approval of the board procedures handbook to be null and void. And included within that, the board procedures handbook was the formation of a policy review committee and the appointment of 2 trustees to serve on that committee. At the January 10th, 2022 board meeting, the board took action to appoint trustees Ozuna and Redford to the policy review committee. As that committee was a result of the now null and void board procedures handbook, it is our recommendation that the board dissolve the current committee as well as declare the appointment of trustees Redford and Ozuna on the committee to be null and void. I will stand for any questions you might have.
Okay, there's not appear to be any questions, so we will move on to the action item part of the agenda. And first up is the Policy 201.1, Board of Education Code of Ethics. Are there any motions? Trustee Ozuna.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve Policy 201.1, Board of Education Code of Ethics.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the Board of Education Code of Ethics.
Second.
Trustee Frazier seconds it. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next is the Policy Review Committee discussion item that Mr. Heller just covered, and I would stand for any motions. Trustee Frazier.
I move to rescind the motion made on January 10th, 2022 to appoint Trustee Ozuna and Trustee Redford to the 2022 Policy Review Committee.
Okay, we have a motion to rescind Trustee Ozuna and Trustee Redford from the Policy Review Committee. Do I have a second? Trustee Redford.
Second.
Okay, I have a second on the motion. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item is our consent agenda, and so I would entertain any motions for the consent agenda. Trustee Redford.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Great. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Trustee Frazier. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. So now we'll move into the work session part of our agenda, and this evening that'll cover communication guidelines and public information, and Char Jackson will be presenting to the board. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb. So this came about as originally I was tasked with updating the communication policies I think last summer, early fall. So those 2 policies, which are 403 and 1000, did go through a committee, and we met several times, came up with some edits, and you'll see those redlined in the packet you have. So you can see the work that's been done on those. Happy to take questions on those, but I thought I would just kind of line out what's in your packet that you have at this time. So, and those did go through the first reading, by the way, those 2 policies. So when they did go through their first reading, it was suggested that we take a look at any policies we might be lacking or any other communication policies existing that might be brought under the communication umbrella. So that's when I pulled in 1000, or I'm sorry, there's so many of these, so I'm trying not to, 5033, which is school publications. I thought that was a good fit, so that is included in your packet as well. Then I did come to the conclusion that although we have social media processes, that they likely should be folded into policy as well. So those are the 2 that you see at the very back of your booklet, and they don't have policy numbers, obviously, as they're not yet policy. So I did divide those into 2. One is the district social policy, and then one is for employees to follow. So this booklet is basically all of the policies, only a little bit shorter. I thought this would be good for new board members, new principals. So what is in policy is not entirely in this booklet. It's just kind of like a Cliff Notes version. So it does have the mission, you might say, in the front cover, and then it starts with the first policy that I'm outlining in the booklet, which is the media release. I thought it would be easiest just to start at the first policy, which again is 40340, and just ask if there are any questions or feedback regarding this first policy.
Any questions or comments, trustees? I have a couple.
Perfect.
Ms. Jackson. The first is, I know the ISBA has a draft
Right.
manual we can work from, and so just for the board, the language changes, where did the language changes come from? Did they come from that base policy manual or a little mixture?
Mostly the committee.
Okay.
So Trustee Ozuna was part of that, Mr. Heller. So it was just going through, realizing that, like, this one's from 1994. So obviously we realized we had a little bit of work to do. So all of the red lines are from the committee suggestions, and ISBA has looked all of these over as well, with the exception of the social media policies. But those have been taken from a lot of their verbiage was used as well in my research.
Chair Kofelt, we did also use ISBA's manual as part of our,
Yeah.
to guide us in that work.
Got it in, okay. So I know ISBA's probably has a legal eye that's on those. Is this something, and it may be too early in the process, is this something that's been run through our district's legal also, looking at these preliminary draft documents?
Mrs. White has, I believe, seen these two, but I'd have to, maybe she has a better memory than I on these two. Do you recall if I?
Mr. Chairman, I happen to be also the eyes that ISBA uses to
Okay.
look through these, so I have seen them, yes.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. The only other comment I had on this one is I know this one, this policy here kind of had a format to it, kind of the title, the purpose, the scope, and that's not consistent through our other policies. And so that would be a
Yeah.
discussion point is
Yes.
if that's a direction we want to go versus, just kind of incorporating it into the formatting that we already use.
Correct. And Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Bub, that's certainly something that we can go through and make happen. I didn't adjust the school publication one because I didn't really do any work on it. I just wasn't sure if we were going to fold it in or not. It was my gut instinct that we would. And then the social media, those don't have a title, purpose, scope yet either, but can certainly follow the format.
Trustee Ozuna.
Ms. Jackson, thanks for bringing these back up to us. One of the things that is both a blessing and a curse is having these policies that are already in place that we can just wordsmith, right, and make updates to. With some of these, and I think especially with the communications one, I think we might be better served to actually scrap it and start over. So much has changed with how we communicate and how we pull in information that just making some minor words, it's probably more than minor here, but I think we might be better served to take your communications guideline, and I think this is a good start, to take that, kind of broaden that, and then decide which components of that belong in policy. And then once we know what that looks like, then we can create the policies from that. I think we might be better served to look at it that way. Or we can go through it this way if others prefer, but this one's just been out there for so long and so much has changed.
Yeah, Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Bub, this did have a lot of changes. So if you look at the red lines, and Trustee Ozuna knows, the whole back page is pretty much scrapped, as there was kind of a weird facilities component into this, and that's covered in another policy, so that was taken out. I'm happy to, and I've done research on this policy, and I'm happy to pull in other policies from other districts and go to the ISBA and come up with a couple alternative policies, and maybe we use one or another or mix and match till we get to a point where we're happy.
Trustee Ozuna.
I think one of the things, as a parent and as a board member, that I look at is we get communication from the district a variety of different ways. We get district communication, we get communication from the schools, we get communication from clubs and programs, we get communication from teachers, multiple teachers if you have kids, that are in secondary level. And there's Blackboard communications, right? I mean, there's a lot out there. And do we want to structure in our communications policy what that should look like? Do we want to talk about what comes from the district, what comes from the schools? I don't think we want to limit what the teachers share. So I think that there's kind of probably a happy medium in there somewhere, but I don't know that we're covering that level of information in the communications policy today. And I didn't see that. I saw pieces of that in the guidelines in this booklet, but I think we might be better served to outline some of that. I don't want to minimize what our parents are getting. I think communication is good, but too much becomes, we get to a point where we can't actually take all the information in.
Right.
How we communicate on our websites, I don't know if we want to include that in the communication update, but that would be another one that we might want to bring in.
Chairman,
I'll stop rambling for just
you're
a
fine.
moment.
Chairman, trustees, Dr. Bubb. So if I'm understanding you, maybe in this policy you're wanting outlined, our website covers communications about X, schools generally cover communications about Y, and the district generally covers communications about Z. Is that something that you're kind of envisioning?
I think that would help. And,
Okay.
we talk a little bit about it's the superintendent and it's the communications officer that do the communication, but at a school level, it's really the principal and different administration, I think. And maybe, what's the intent of the communications policy? Is it really for district communications, or is it the district and the schools? And then we need to, and I think that it's probably the district and the schools, then we need to organize that a little bit differently.
Thank you.
I do love that you've brought in social media. I think that that's a big component that we need to address.
Yeah,
so sure. I really appreciate that you've pulled that in. And I appreciate that you've pulled in both social media for our district and our schools and also personal social media. I think that's an important part for us to cover.
So in the interest of time, Chairman and trustees, and Dr. Bubb, it sounds like this one I have clear direction on, so I'm going to move ahead on this one from the direction I've received from you all. Does anyone else have anything I should take notes on regarding this policy, or do you want to go ahead and move to the 500? Or sorry, 503?
No, we can move on to the next one.
Okay. So this one, as I told you earlier, I pulled in the school publications just because it seemed to fit. So no changes made on this one. And that's not to say they don't need to be made. This was updated in 2009. But just my first question would be, does this seem applicable to be in a communication policy umbrella?
Any comments from the trustees? Char, for me, my first blush at this one was, this seemed more like, almost like a process at the school level, not necessarily a district.
It is.
Yeah. So my first reaction was probably not needed as part of a district communication strategy or policy.
Okay.
Now, I would feel differently if this was a publication that was representing the whole district going out, but this seems to focus on the school level.
Okay.
I didn't have a problem with the policy, but I don't know that it needs to be wrapped into a district-wide communication piece.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we can move on to the next one.
Okay. Did I just, oh, I'm so sorry. I skipped 1000, the statement of guiding principles and code. My pages got stuck together, so I'll just have Abby reverse back one page. So this policy, again, went through the committee that I mentioned earlier. I did get some advice from the ISBA, from Red Sky PR on this one, and you can see, again, the red lines that it went through. Did anyone have any specifics on this particular 1000 policy?
Any trustees now? I don't want to hog the mic here from you. My comments on this one was, this seems like a great communication strategy document that could kind of preface the communication policies that fall under it, like social media, those sort of things that we utilize in some of these other policies, rather than this being a policy in and of itself. I don't know if any of the other trustees feel differently, but this seemed to be kind of guiding principles that we value and want.
Yes.
Stakeholder input. which is great from a strategy standpoint. And then we'd have some other policies that would drill down about how we accomplish that.
Chairman Trustees, is there any other questions or comments, feedback on that one?
I do not see any, so we can move on to the next one.
Just making sure I don't miss anything. All right, so that leads us.
Hold on one sec, Trustee
Yes,
Ozuna.
I'm going to ask one question on this one, and it's probably for Dr. Bubb, but you've started to have parent and community forums, and I know that's part of what we plan to do going forward. Is that something we want to put in policy, or would you like to have those and make sure that that's something we want to continue with?
Yeah, Chair Kofelt, Trustee Ozuna, the only reason I don't want to put it in policy is I'd like to have some flexibility with it as far as because different groups come up, and being able to maneuver around those and get the voice of different groups I think is really, really important. So having that flexibility, I think it's a clear expectation from the board that we engage our community in a variety of ways. Being able to do that with some flexibility is important.
All right, Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So this moves us to district or school-operated social media. And I'm happy to take questions about this one.
Any questions or comments from the trustees? Trustee Ozuna.
Ms. Jackson, I need to give you an apology because I didn't actually think we were going through these like first reading. I thought we were doing more of a work group, just discussion. And so I will take the time to read through this and get you some like actual specific feedback because I'm not prepared for that tonight.
Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Bubb, that's perfectly fine. I didn't expect to, get to a final version that would be ready for a first reading, but I did want to make you familiar and give you the history of why I'm bringing these forth. So that's timeline-wise perfectly fine.
Great, thank you.
And for clarification for the board, this is not a first reading. This is just a work session to get this kind of feedback. Well, I have a few comments on this one just as we work through this. And Dr. Bubb, do you have something? I know I looked at you.
Well, Chair Kofelt, I just want to, Char, is there any way you can go through, especially this being a new policy, just kind of an outline of what this is looking at, what we're trying to accomplish with this? Where we got this, kind of some of the history there, and what we're looking at doing with this policy. Does that work for the board? Would that be helpful?
Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So I'm happy to go through. I won't read this word for word, but I can certainly address what Dr. Bubb mentioned. So realizing that as a district, we have certain expectations that the public has for us from a social media perspective. We wanted to first outline that we realize this is a valuable tool to reach out to our community. It's where a lot of people go for their information, almost strictly, some people. And so we outline in the first 3 points that it's definitely a means of disseminating time-sensitive information to promote things that are happening in our district and to recognize individuals who we feel like need recognizing. Then it outlines how each district, that each school operates a social media website and that they will have a content manager. And Ms. Shepard works with them and walks them through the process of getting their social media started if it's not started, offers them advice, and we set out the expectation that they're expected to share their username and passwords. The next paragraph just talks about how it needs to follow relevant district policies, state and federal rules and regulations, all of that, code of ethics, and that confidential and proprietary information shall not be posted. So anything, directory information, student information that we wouldn't want posted, including student records. And the next paragraph just goes on to explain that in more detail. We do have our social media, kind of our purpose behind social media posted on our Instagram and Facebook. And we do let people know that we may remove any material that, and this lines out items 1 through 12, And as you can imagine, this is anything that's obscene, vulgar. Campaigning for political office is one of them. So these 12 items are laid out pretty definitively so people know, okay, this is not acceptable. If I post it, it's going to be deleted. And these guidelines are displayed to users and available via hyperlink, so everyone knows ahead of time what can and can't be posted. And the district and/or the content manager does reserve the right to remove any content that we feel falls above one of the 12 bullet points. Does that give you a good history on that one?
Chair Kofelt, trustees. So the only thing I would say is, so social media obviously is, we want to be able to meet our patrons where they're at. And that means our kids, that means our parents, that means our community, kind of where they're at. But right now, our system is very loose when it comes to what that looks like. And really just clear protocols, clarity is kindness, if you will. Providing some clarity around what that looks like and what our expectations are around social media. Just as fast as good news can travel on social media, we also recognize that bad news can travel on social media, believe it or not. And so we would just like to make sure that there's some real clear guidelines when it comes to the use of social media, which I think is a powerful tool, but we want to use it in the right way.
Questions or comments from the trustees? I don't want to cut you off. Did you have? Trustee Ozuna?
You know, one of the things that I think that we need to talk about or look at when you're doing the creation of this is how we use social media groups or the communication tools within that. Because I don't know that it happens in the classroom, but I know that happens with sports and clubs and other things that, like an Instagram group is the communication tool,
Yes.
but not all students have that. I did see, I think it's in the other policy that there's a requirement to get information out to students that don't have that, but that really puts them at a disadvantage. And I think not everybody wants their child to be on social media, so I think we really need to decide if that's the right way to go or if we just put an end to that. I think it's worthy of a conversation anyway.
Okay.
No, great point. My comment on this policy is I think it's definitely a needed policy. You know, like Trustee Ozuna said so well, you know, this is a blessing and a curse. It's the world we live in today. One thing that was missing in this, and I'm not sure how it applies to the school district, but many times when you have these social media platforms and you're pushing out information, are people able to respond on that platform? And then if a response is perhaps, I'll use the word inappropriate, perhaps due to language or something else, what is the legal policy for, can you take that down? Because I know there are legal there are legal guidance for if you can take something down, or if you're in a public forum, you can't. I did not see that addressed in this policy, so I think that's probably something that should be, just so that the district kind of keeps itself out of trouble.
Yeah, Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Bob, so we're not in the habit of deleting comments, but yes, if it falls under this, and then I would refer to Ms. White if she wanted to add something, and then I can work with her to get that folded into this policy.
Mr. Chairman, trustees, Dr. Bob, there are two different types of social media formats. One is an informational format where you are simply providing information to your public and there are no comments. The other is an engagement, informational exchange type of format, and it sounds like that is the format that you have been using. A lot of school districts never made that decision when they started it and didn't think that through. And now we have schools who are going back and making that decision as a board. Do they just simply want to be providing information, in which case comments are stopped? All comments are stopped. As opposed to selectively addressing, I think you had 12 categories in the draft policies of the types of comments that you would remove. It makes things easier for a content manager when there are no comments. But there are also philosophical and policy decisions of why you would want to have an exchange forum as opposed to just an informational forum.
Thank you. Chairman, trustees, Dr. Bob. So we generally, and Ms. Shepard can weigh in on this, allow people to comment as we feel like it's it can be worthwhile. There were some informational posts we did for the bond that we or the levy recently that we did disable comments because we did feel like we just simply wanted to get the information out for taxpayers about what this would do for your bottom line. So we did turn off commenting for those, but generally we leave comments on. And if someone has an issue, we've reached out, via messenger to resolve them before. So we feel like it can be a good way to reach our community. So we would probably not be in favor of never allowing comments. So we would utilize both, and I'm happy to outline that and work with Mrs. White to get that in here.
Yeah, I would like to see that when the policy does come back, a recommendation, either, just in presentation or in the policy itself as to, do we want to do an informational or one where there's an exchange of info? And if we're going to do both, kind of what are the parameters for when we might use each, just so it's clear to the folks throughout the district using it. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we can move on to the last one.
So this policy directs employee use of social media. And I would say that generally we talk about this the most when it's concerning election time. And we want employees to be aware that, during their time at school, they can't advocate for an issue one way or the other. So this tends to come up a lot during election time. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come up at other times. So this policy kind of outlines first that, we must protect that private proprietary information, which includes personnel data, student data. Those are a couple examples. Anything protected by state and federal law. That you would not be able to use the district's name or logos or images, even if it's public. And our logo is obviously on our website. It's still proprietary. You're still not able to take that logo and use it for your own purposes. So we're still covered in that, and that talks a little bit about that. And it directs the employee about using email and social media for personal purposes during non-work times, and that's when you're expected to do that. And any other social media use would just be for, as Trustee Ozuna mentioned, sports or things that are affiliated with West Ada. Now, when you're on your personal site, you should make it clear that your views expressed or posted are not necessarily those of the district. So this is when it's helpful during election time, for example. And then the keep personal and professional accounts separate. I feel like there's probably a better way to word that. Basically, what's that saying is if it's not school related, like say I have a screen printing business, I wouldn't use my West Ada personal address to facilitate that Facebook page. Any non-school related activity needs to be done with your own personal email, not a West Ada email. So that's kind of what that's talking about, but I think that needs a little wordsmithing as it's not clear as I would like it to be. Then the second page talks about contact with students. So there's been a lot of issues with, students as friends, networking, that kind of thing. So this basically just addresses that informal or social involvement with a student. And there's 5 bullet points there, just anything from contacting students through electronic means other than the email or the telephone. This addresses what Trustee Ozuna mentioned about the coaches electronically contacting a team member, inappropriate contact, anything like that. It goes on to talk about staff and students using social networking websites, and then it wraps up about just the professional relationship that needs to be maintained with staff and student. I'll stand for questions on this one.
Any comments or questions? I do have a couple on this one.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've found in policies, some policies need like a definition section.
Okay.
Where and this policy jumped out at me as being one of those.
Great.
And I think you touched on one of them is what do we mean by, I'll go down, professional social media activities. What does
Yes,
that,
for sure. Okay.
yeah, what does that mean? Another one would be up at the top when we talk about confidential and proprietary. What would be an example of proprietary so that employees would understand that piece? I'm just scrolling through my notes here to
Please.
give you some feedback on this. Yeah, those were the main ones. I really like as much as possible, having as few policies as possible, so that you don't, just by the sheer nature of a volume of policies, you miss one that's so if there was a way to lump this into a social media policy and you would have district type, and I would just say, take a look at that and see, that way if somebody wanted to know about our social media policies, they could go to one policy and it kind of covers personal and district.
Chairman, trustees, Dr. Webb, I did originally start out that way, and just because it got so lengthy and I felt like people may become easily confused in between district and employees, for me, ultimately, in feedback I sought from a few other people, thought it best to do them separately, but I can certainly look at it again. I just know, seeing these are just very lengthy. That's one of my hesitation points. But I'm happy to entertain that again and just see if it makes better sense.
No, that's fair feedback, and perhaps the policies are too lengthy to do it, and ultimately that'll be the decision. But yeah, just trying to look at if you can take like concepts and lump them together. I always kind of prefer that. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Jackson? No. Okay. Thank you, and yeah, hopefully we gave you some good feedback, at least to start consolidating this, and then we'll get an opportunity to take a look at it again.
Yes, Chairman, trustees, Dr. Bob. Yes, I got clear feedback, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is executive session, and I would entertain a motion to move into executive session. And just a reminder that whoever makes the motion, if we could read the Idaho code language. Trustee Frazier.
I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints to charges brought against a public officer, staff member, or individual agent or public school student.
Okay, we have a motion to enter into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061B. Do we have a second? Trustee Redford.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Trustee Ozuna.
Aye.
Trustee Frazier.
Aye.
Trustee Redford. Aye. And the chair votes aye, so motion passes 4-0. I'll just make one comment before we actually move into executive session. Is this executive session may take a bit, so I just want folks that are here to know we'd love to see you when we come back, but this one may take a little bit, just so for planning purposes. Okay. All right, and we stand moved into executive session. I'll call the West Ada Board of Trustees meeting back in order from executive session at 21:08 or 9:08 p.m. And I would entertain any motions. Trustee Frazier.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the personnel recommendation from administration for employee L to be placed on probation.
Okay, we have a motion to approve personnel recommendation from administration. Do we have a second? Trustee Redford.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. The good of the order, just a couple updates. This Wednesday at 5 p.m., we will be hearing from the 4 applicants we have for the Zone 2 position. They will be making just basically presenting as to why they're interested and qualified for the position to the board. That'll be here in this room starting at 5. And then we have another special meeting on March 29th at 5:30, whereby those that are chosen by the board to be finalists will be invited and asked a series of questions from the board. And then lastly, just a notice of quorum, April 6th at 6 p.m. The Board of Trustees and the Meridian City Council will have a joint meeting at the Meridian City Council chambers. So is there any future agenda items that any of the trustees would like to see? Okay. Trustee Ozuna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one thing I was going to ask that we add for a future agenda item is a discussion around all-day kindergarten. And I don't think we're probably quite ready to have that conversation yet, but if we can just get it on the radar for here upcoming. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Trustee Redford.
Motion to adjourn, please.
And we had a very polite motion to adjourn. Thank you. And a second, Trustee Frazier.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. 4-0 passes, we're adjourned.
Thank you.